Hey, friends, and we are now going to begin our second book in the Little Shaq series, and it's called Little Shaq Takes a Chance. We last left off with Little Shaq and Barry fixing up the rec center garden and kind of also showing us how they fixed up their relationship as well. So let's find out what is going to happen in this book. So, Little Shaq Takes a Chance by Shaquille O'Neal, and the illustrations are by Theodore Taylor III. So, Chapter 1 Pick and Roll. And this is the table of contents and the first picture in our book. Pick and Roll. Little Shaq and his cousin Barry pushed open the front door of Little Shaq's house. Hi, Mom, Little Shaq called as they ran into the kitchen. Hi, boys, said Mom. How was the game? Little Shaq and Barry had spent the afternoon at the rec center where they played basketball after school. It was great, Little Shaq said. I scored my first 3-point shot. Wow, said Mom, pulling him in for a hug. I'm so proud of you. It was awesome, said Barry. Even the other team cheered. Little Shaq smiled and opened the refrigerator. Now, don't start filling up on snacks, said Mom. You need to save room for dinner. But I'm starving, Little Shaq whined. That 3-pointer made me hungry. How about some grapes? She said. Then you boys need to wash up. We have company coming over. I made something special for dinner. Little Shaq's eyes lit up. He wondered what it could be. Maybe Mom made pizza with lots of cheese and toppings, or maybe it was her famous fried chicken and creamy mashed potatoes. Little Shaq sniffed the air for a clue, but he couldn't smell a thing. Suddenly, Little Shaq's stomach made a loud gurgling noise. He laughed. I can't wait for dinner. Me either, said Barry. Pass the grapes. Open up, Barry, said Little Shaq. He tossed a grape into Barry's mouth. 3 points, cried Barry. Now let me try. Okay, boys, move it along, said Mom. This is a kitchen, not the rec center. Little Shaq carefully slid the bowl of grapes across the counter to Barry. Hey, what's that? Barry asked. He pointed at an orange piece of paper that had been under the bowl. Little Shaq picked up the flyer. It's for your art show on Friday, said Mom. Parkview Elementary Spring Art Show, Friday, 6 p.m., Rec Center. Contact Ms. Terpenny to volunteer for refreshments. Oh, do we have to go to that? Asked Little Shaq. Of course, said Mom. Have you started your projects yet? Little Shaq and Barry shook their heads no. We're starting tomorrow, said Barry. I thought I'd try painting. That's great, Barry, said Mom. What about you, Little Shaq? I don't know, he said. I'm no good at art. You've never given art a real chance. You can do anything, said Mom. Just then, the doorbell rang. We'll talk more about this later, she said. Go wash up. Little Shaq and Barry washed their hands and put on clean t-shirts. When they came downstairs, Malia, Little Shaq's older sister, was setting the final plate on the dining room table. Their younger brother Tater followed, adding a napkin to each spot. Nana Ruth and her friend, Mr. Witten, were already sitting. Mr. Witten had brought a beautiful bouquet of a dozen pink roses from his garden. Barry and Little Shaq said hello to Nana Ruth and Mr. Witten. Then Little Shaq took the seat next to Tater just as Mom and Dad entered the room. Mom and Dad were each carrying a big tray filled with colorful rolls of rice. Little Shaq was confused. He had no idea what was for dinner. Oh my, that looks beautiful, said Nana Ruth. What is it? Asked Little Shaq. It's sushi, said Mom. It's Japanese. I learned how to make it last week. Little Shaq did not know what to think. It didn't look like any food he'd ever seen before. It's raw fish and rice, added Malia. What? You mean it's not cooked? Little Shaq crinkled his nose. No, thank you. Oh, Shaquille, said Mom, don't be so stubborn. Try to keep an open mind. Your mom worked real hard on this dinner, buddy, Dad said with a nod. Everyone, please, dig in. Little Shaq watched as the rest of his family piled their plates high with sushi. Instead of forks, they used 2 wooden sticks to pick up the rolls. They're called chopsticks, said Barry. They're fun. You eat sushi? Asked Little Shack. Barry nodded, swallowing a mouthful. My favorites are the spicy ones. Well, I'm not eating it, Little Shack said, slumping in his chair. His tummy gurgled again. This was not the special dinner Little Shack had hoped for. At least the night can't get any worse, he thought. But Little Shack had a thought too soon. Mom, Tater yelled, pushing away a plate of sushi. If Little Shack isn't eating it, then I'm not either. Little Shack could feel his cheeks get hot. Tater, stop copying me, he shouted. Dad! Boys, this is what's for dinner, said Dad. You know the rule. If I don't like what's for dinner, I can make something myself, Little Shack recited. That's right, said Mom. And you can make Tater's dinner too. You know where the peanut butter and jelly are. Little Shack slid out of his seat and walked into the kitchen. Tater followed right behind him. Little Shack took out a loaf of bread, a jar of crunchy peanut butter, and a jar of grape jelly. Little Shack spread peanut butter on one slice of bread and then jelly on another. He squished the two slices together to make a sandwich. By the time he was done, he had made two piles of sandwiches, one for him and one for Tater. Let's go, Tater, Little Shack said, handing him a plate of sandwiches. They headed back into the dining room and took their seats. Little Shack watched Tater take a big bite of his sandwich. Then he glanced at his own plate. Little Shack sighed. He didn't want peanut butter and jelly. Around the table, everyone seemed to love Mom's dinner. Little Shack thought he might have been too stubborn after all. The spicy sushi actually sounded pretty good. But when Little Shack looked over at the sushi trays, he felt his tummy sink. They were empty. Chapter 2, In the Paint. So we're going to start reading that one tomorrow. All right, friends. That's it for today's read aloud. Till next time. Bye.